You can carry it outside, Jazakallah khair.
Is negative, so to say. And then any conversation that causes stress, anxiety, fear of consequences. What is fear of consequences? When we say something difficult, people may give us hard time, or they may get upset, or they may really don't like us, or can be little sign. Then there is, for example, giving negative feedback. Sometimes we have to give negative feedback. Like I have been through at least 40 different performance evaluation in my life when I was working in my corporate world. And some on an ongoing time comes that we do what is known as performance evaluation. And that time of the person. So that's called kind of giving a feedback that we consider is a negative feedback in a single jump. If they say no, we are kind of afraid. Because some of the painters have a very bad habit of smoking, as we all know. I think I've been through, I'm sure you have too. And sometimes we don't like our house. Nobody should be smoking in our house. How do we tell the person without getting him upset or getting a message across? Looking at night in the morning, telling them to do something about this dog. How do you do that? So these are real life situations that we are talking about, difficult conversations. Then the main reason we really don't want to talk about is the fear of the consequences. What will happen if I say that? That makes the situation harder to face, whether raise or to avoid it. Sometimes we mostly avoid it because we don't want to talk about it. Let's keep it quiet. But that keeping quiet doesn't solve the problem. It actually increases the problem. Then the thought of getting into a fight with the neighbors about the dog makes you nervous. What will happen? The dog may bark you even or can hurt you, whatever. And we fear that if we confront the problem, things may even get worse. We may be rejected or attacked, or we might get hurt, or other person in ways that we didn't even intend. So these are the kind of things that we are trying to stay away. So, but if you don't deal with it, then what happens? Here we say nothing, we keep quiet. We feel taken advantage of, because we feel that whatever we want to say, we could not say it anymore. And things get worse. Right now, the dog is barking only once a night. Now it may start barking 6 times a night. Then what? So we got to really solve the problem rather than just keep quiet about it. And we lose the opportunity to improve things. Sometimes we want to say loudly what is on our mind, and if you don't do that, then obviously things get worse. So that's why the tact is good. And people say, oh, public relations, be nice. All these are great things. But guess what? It doesn't cut it. It does not solve the problem of difficult conversation. So basically we need to head on. And like the Quran says, قُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. Straightforward talk is the best way to go rather than trying to go around the bush. You know what I mean? So that's why I think the public relation work is good for different reasons, but not trying to solve the difficult conversations. So we need advice that is more powerful than be diplomatic, or be positive. How can you be positive when you have your heart burning about a project that you don't like and you want to talk about it? Then it says the problem run deeper, and so must the answers. So we need to shift from being a message, we say, okay, this is it, what I think, to what is known as the learning stance. What learning stance means is we need to learn from each other before we start talking about our assumptions, before we talk about our reaction, and before we talk about anything that makes us feel uneasy. So now, learning conversation is an alternative to turn the damaging battle of opposing messages into the more constructive approach. Unless we get together with a person and we talk and hash out the situation, that is the best way to go about it rather than assuming something and get on with it. Changing how you deal with a difficult conversation takes work. It's not an easy thing like anything else. Anything that, like the word in Arabic is called rizq, and in English it is translated as risk. The word risk in English has come from the Arabic word rizq. So that means there is no such thing that we do meaningful that doesn't have any risk. The entire life is full of risks. So in doing this thing, it's not going to be easy 1, 2, 3 things. It's going to be really a process where we have to go by. Now, dealing constructively with tough topics and awkward situations strengthens our relationship. We think otherwise. But what happens when we get things cleared up, the camaraderie works a lot better than just talking about it and forgetting about it. For every case that we sometimes consider a hopeless situation, we shouldn't be talking about it. Well, the research shows, this is not my research, this is the research from the Harvard professors that did research for the period of X number of years in 2000. And they said that for every case that is truly hopeless, there are 1,000 that appear hopeless, but they are not. But we don't want to take a risk, that's the reason. The key to solve the difficult conversation is the shift from message delivery, this is it, to learning, what do you have to offer, or what can we do together. Eliminating fear and anxiety is an unrealistic goal. We are human beings, خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. We have been created by Allah weak in whatever way we think. We are still weak. So anxiety is part of life, and so is fear. It's going to be there. But job of this entire process is not to eliminate it, but to reduce the fear and have an anxiety, left over, fix it in time. So that is the objective of this particular project, okay? Now what we have to do is sort out. Before we start talking about, we need to do some homework to really get this right. And to do the homework, we understand what is not said. You'll be surprised at how many people just say things and don't really mean it, or mean and don't say it. We have a habit of hiding behind our brain things that we don't spell out because of fear or because of whatever reason. So we need to sort that out, what is not being said. How do you find out? We go through the process. How do you find out what is not being said? So then, gap between the two is the heart of the difficult conversation. People have what is known as a recorder in their mind. And that recorder is going to tell you completely opposite of what you are saying verbally with the tongue. So we need to get both the recorder in the mind as well as our tongue in sync in order for it to solve the problem. So there are no two ways about this thing. Then what happened or should have happened, we need to check into that. And then what feelings are involved. A lot of people say, oh, what is the feeling? Feeling has nothing to do with the conversation. Actually, feeling has everything to do with it. We don't utter a word without having something feeling in our heart and our mind. So we need to check that. And identity issues. What is identity is in each individual has its own, what I call it is they feel that I need to have my honor. They call it honor. My honor has to be respected. I don't want to be belittled or whatever. The fear that we have, we need to check that out. What are the identity issues involved? If the conversation goes on, how would you feel about it? What will happen to your personality and on and on? So we go further up and he say, difficult conversations are almost never about getting facts right. Right and wrong things are really not as critical as what people think, that they are about the perception. Everybody has a perception. Whether we consider it right or we consider it wrong doesn't matter. Right and wrong is not the issue here. Issue is how you feel about it and what you think as a value system in your mind, so I can understand it. When you understand what my value system is, once we get that crossed out, then things can move forward better. So we have perception that we make out of whatever we have background-wise. We perceive something that should be only this way and not that way. And then we have some interpretation based on our experience, based on our lifestyle, based on our background. All these play part into our interpretation of things. Just look at Quran is only one, but look at how many interpretations we find. People have, every interpretation has a value. People think about it and they have their own opinion about it. And each opinion has a value in their own set. So we need to really pull that out before we can discuss any difficult conversation. And they are not about what the context says, but what it means. Meaning is more important than the words that are written down. You know, sometimes people look at the very small little lines at the bottom of the contract that are written down. Nobody wants to even know except the lawyer may know. So these are the kind of things we need to know, what is exactly the intent rather than what is written down on the face value. Then, we have to, they are not important. So they are not important about the true, but what is important is in one conversation. So interpretation and judgments are important to expose. Everybody has their interpretation and everybody has got their judgment. Some people make judgment. We need to find out how they came up to that judgment rather than taking it at face value. So then we go to the next part of it, and it says that it allows us to move away from delivering the message and towards asking questions, exploring how the person is making sense of the situation. What I think about your intentions will affect how I think about you and ultimately how our conversation goes. So what happened and should have happened? So we make common and crippling assumption, who is right? That's the first thing comes to mind. I'm right, he is wrong. Or they are right and somebody else is wrong. Right and wrong situation gets us into all the circles. We never get any problem solved. Crippling assumption about who is right, who meant what. What did he mean? We think about it, it meant. How do we know? And then who is to blame? All of a sudden we just blame somebody. Somebody's got to be blamed. These are the key problems. Thinking of somebody right and wrong, thinking of somebody what he thought and what he meant, and thinking of who is to blame. So the reason is, our problem is we say it's them, and guess what they say? Problem is us. So we just don't get anywhere. He said you are wrong, I said I'm wrong. So what happens? No problem gets resolved unless we really come to some sort of understanding. Why do you say that I'm wrong, or why do you say that you're right? So we need to get deeper into what is meant by being right and wrong. So limited information we have. What is meant by limited information? See, we go to places and we look at things. Everybody is looking at this whole. Everybody has a different idea what they are concentrating on. We are all human beings. We have our mindset, we have our background, we have our education, and we have our lifestyle that actually gives a particular perception of what is going on, compared to somebody who is basically different than us, and they will have a different interpretation and different ideas. So what it means that we have a limited information. No person can see everything about everything that is available around us. We can only see one part of it, and we take some part and ignore the other part. What we ignore may be important to somebody else, and what we take may not be important for somebody else. So in other words, each individual has their own selection process going on in the mind. What do I need to take from this, and what do I need to ignore from it? I'm sorry, I got something done here. Okay, so the bottom line is that limited base we have, and a selective observation. Our observation is selective. God has given us a very limited power. And the limited power is basically, Quran talks about it, خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. Means Quran says clearly that no matter what you think yourself, but you have a lot of limitations. And the other ayah, I'm going to bring it up in a minute. So, and then we assume we know. This is it. I have all the knowledge I need. No matter what you say, I know it all. That's another fallacy that we all have. And then it says perceived through past experiences, because we have past experiences, what we have gone through this, or this is the way it should be. So I don't see this should be that way. And that's in our mind, that's what we think. This is the only way it works. You know, wajadna abauna. This is the way people use the Quran, says that we found our forefathers like that, so that is the way it should be. Nothing else is right. Kind of a concept, because this is what we have all our life we have been doing. So so what I'm saying, the perceived through past experience and conclusion reflect our self-interest. Why I say self-interest? For example, if I give a house to two people, one group is called the buyer's group, other group is called the seller's group. And you tell them that what will be the price of this house. Guess what? Everybody will come, a group that wants to buy the house will come up with a lower price. A person who is really trying to sell it will come up with a higher price than the market fair value. Those two different opinions, same house, same location, same locality, everything is same. All other denominators being the same, is still two different group comes up with a two different solution. Why? Because the self-interest is involved. Whether we like it or not, I have that self-interest built into our body. So we normally don't think like that this is it. You know, everybody is getting a different, buyer has a different point of view, seller has a different point of view. When things go wrong in a human relationship, whatever it is, everyone has contributed in some way. We may not admit it, we may not even know what it is, we need to explore that. So we think they are selfish. When we are going into discussion, we think the other guy or the person is selfish because he doesn't care about me. Or we say there is naive, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Or we say they are controlling, like my boss. He always his way or the highway, even though he may be wrong. That's the life in the corporate world, as we all know. So controlling people have that. So this is what we think, or at least, you know. And then we think we think it is them, and they think it is us. It's just the way it works both ways. So we never say, you know, people always say that what you are saying doesn't make sense. Did we ever say that what I am saying makes absolutely no sense? Nobody says that. Because we consider ourselves, quote unquote, pious, or whatever you want to call it, the right. we have nothing wrong we do. So we always, impose on other person that you are what you are, I am what I am, and I am right and you are wrong kind of a concept. So our interpretations are biased and implicit rules. What the implicit rules are, I had a professor when I used to go to college, and a professor was very strict about the time management. We all should be. But if I walk into the door 3 minutes past his starting time, he will lock the door. He will not allow me to get in. And so we had to be so much particular about it. He was more concerned about locking the door than really giving the lectures you are supposed to do. Because that's built in his system that if you are 3 minutes late, you are done. And in life we know that everybody has circumstances. Sometimes we are, like in the old rule that goes on, when you punch the clock, I used to do in my old age, the 7 minutes, they call it 7 minutes of the leeway. I mean, why do they do that? Because we are all human beings. Sometimes things happen no matter what we think. 2 or 3, 7 minutes here and there doesn't make any difference. But there are people who have implicit rule. They really have that, this is it, this is the way it is, my way or the highway kind of a thought process. So this is the ayah that I was referring to before, the يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُخَفَّفَ عَنْكُمْ وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. So that says Allah wants to lighten your burdens for a human being who was created weak. And there is another beautiful ayah from Surah Qaf, and it says, لَقَدْ كُنْتَ فِي غَفْلَةٍ مِّنْ هَذَا لَقَدْ كُنْتَ في غفلة من هذا فكشفنا عنك غطاءك فبصرك اليوم حديد. Wonderful, wonderful expression that says that right now we see only what we see in the front. We cannot see in the back. What we think of, we can think of only limited space. And on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take that what you call it, the ghita. They call it, He will lift us the mask, or the screen that we have, that we don't know what that is right now, and it will be from you, so your sight on this day will be sharp. You will be looking at everything you thought you didn't do or do. So this is the Quranic ayah that actually explains the weakness of the human being and the limitation of the human being in all faculties, no matter what PhDs or whatever we have, second we know details, but still we are human and we are weak. We hardly admit that, but it's a fact. Then we start from the certainty that I'm sure this is it. We go to the curiosity. Let's find out. How do they know? What do they know that I don't? That's the very first question to ask when we are discussing things. We never ask this question. We think we know it all. But they know sometimes more about us than we know about ourselves. That's a human life. Because everybody watches things differently. We don't watch everything all the time. How might their viewpoint make sense? We hardly think about that. We always think what I'm saying makes a lot of sense, what he or she is saying doesn't matter. But that is the critical part of it. What don't I know about myself that others know? Because people watch you, you are only a single human being, and the other hundreds of people are watching you in different actions, and they see you differently in different circumstances, and watch you and listen to you, and so they have a lot more know-how than you have yourself. Then the different information that we have, selective observation like we talked about before, and a different set of experiences. Somebody is a PhD, somebody is a high school student, somebody has learned all the Arabic and know Arabic backward and forward, somebody doesn't know much about it, somebody like me who stands up on the prayer and doesn't know half of what he's talking about. But people that are, mashallah, well familiar with, they know it all, what they are talking about. So there are differences in people and different levels of them. So interpretation, when we are talking about, we should say both make sense at the same time. Who is right is irrelevant. We have an opinion, you have an opinion of your own, I have an opinion of mine. Let's explore why you have that opinion, and let me help you understand why I have my opinion. And that's how we can get to understand each other better. Now, what do they know that I don't? I already did this, I guess. Then we each make sense in our story of what happened or should have happened. Arguing without understanding is unpersuasive and blocks from exploring each other's stories. Our conclusions are based on our interpretation of what we observe with certain rules. The rules I just shared with you, and have developed from the past experiences, from how things supposed to be done and how they should, how people should act. In reality, your story and their story both merits. This gives you a starting platform to work together to solve the issue for mutual understanding. Now it says, beautiful ayah, and that basically, I'll just do the translation. Oh, you believe, if a corrupt person brings you any news or bad news, inquire into it carefully, lest you should harm others unknowingly. Afterwards, be sorry for what you did. So basically, be careful what we say. Now, another problem that we have is what? Who meant what? Who meant what means our assumptions about intentions of others are often wrong, incomplete. We need to explore them. We cannot get into the minds of the people what they are thinking or in their heart. Even people, their own intention change their intentions every now and then depending upon the circumstances. So intentions never stay constant. Like the wall or the house, they keep changing all the time depending upon the circumstances and the people they meet. So the bottom line is we assume the intentions from the impact on us. What is it? He meant to hurt me. Somebody says some word and their word, we did not like them, and basically we feel that they were hurting to us. In effect, the person was not trying to hurt you. He was trying to get a message across. How do we know? Unless we talk to the person. Just the fact that we feel hurt doesn't mean that the person's intention is bad. And then we defend our good intention because we think we are the best. And position and ignore complexity of human being. What is complexity? Means people are never always right or always wrong. There is in between. We all have ideas, we all have some weaknesses, we all have some strengths. There is no such thing that I have all the strengths or I have all the weakness. We have to complexify, means really be in the model, be in the middle. So we defend our good intention position and ignore complexity of human motivations. Our stand on good intention aggravate hostility with the other person. If we keep pounding on it, this is what I think, this is what I think, guess what the other person said? Enough, bye. No, nothing happens. And the problem doesn't get resolved. Problem still stays the same. Sometimes it aggravates. Now we simply cannot take all the sights, sounds and facts and feeling involved in even a single encounter. Inevitably we end up noticing some things and ignoring others. And what we each choose to notice and ignore will be different for each one of us. Also we have access to different information. We act as if we have got access to all the important information there is to know about other person, but we don't. The internal experience is far more complex than we can imagine. I will talk about this, so I don't want to belabor it. During difficult conversation, it helps to make the implicit rule explicit. Meaning, make them all clear out in the open rather than what you have in the back of your mind. So he says, one of the wonderful expression of the Surah Hujurat says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ijtanibu kathiran min adh-dhanni inna ba'da adh-dhanni ithm. Oh, you believe, avoid much guesswork, for some of such guesswork is a sin. And then beautiful ayah from Surah Isra. It said, and do not pursue that of which you have no knowledge. And a lot of stuff we don't have a knowledge. We consider that we do, but we don't. Unless we talk to the person involved and get directly from the person as to what is and what is not. For indeed, you shall be questioned for the use of your eyes, ears, and the minds. This instruction covers all aspects of Islamic life, moral, legal, political, administrative, and applies to science, arts, and education. This is not just for human relation. It applies to everything we do, A to Z. Then another beautiful expression from Surah Ankabut, and it says that وَلَا تُجَادِلُوا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. And that is also the same thing, ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. The word ahsan has a lot more. I can talk for half an hour about the word ahsan. but I don't want to because I don't want to waste your time. Bottom line is, in general, excellent. In an excellent manner that you can deal with is the best way to do. How can you become excellent? Unless you do homework first. Before it requires homework to do, what are you going to say, when you are going to say, how you are going to say it. And that is what we need to develop slowly. By the way, entire project that I'm talking about here is not just one thing is done and over with. It's a process for the life of it, more or less. I've been doing this for 11 years. Believe me, I have not gone into 5% of what needs to be done. I need to practice 95% of it myself. So, and then there is a beautiful hadith from Tirmidhi, and it says that no group of people has gone astray after being guided except those who took arguments as a way of communication. So argument is, in a sense, in Islam, more or less prohibited, really, because argument for the sake of argument doesn't solve anything. It actually creates more animosity, it creates really ill feelings, and sometimes we lose relationship. How do most of the divorces happen in this country? You just think about it. Just think about it for a moment, and you will come to this conclusion. You know what I'm saying here? Basically, we need to stop all the argument. Let's talk as a human, understanding person. Untangle the impact. Whatever hurt you, instead of thinking about what hurt you, look at what was the intent behind it. So what did the other person actually say or do? What was the impact on me? Based on this impact, what am I assuming about the other person's intentions? Intentions are invisible. Nobody knows it, even people themselves. I don't know my intentions sometimes, what they are, because they keep changing with the time. So they are very invisible, but yet what we do, we assume that I know that. I know what he meant, or she meant, for that matter, and hold your views as hypotheses. So when you start the conversation, you say, this is why I think as an idea, correct me if I'm wrong. Guess what? That creates a very congenial environment, rather than saying that this is it, what I think you did this to me. What that do? Nothing. So state your thought as a hypothesis at best, nothing more, because it's your idea. You don't know the fact. The fact is only when you come around between the person and you, and then you basically decide between the two of you what is the fact. Until then, it's only a hypothesis unless proven by the other person. Then state your thoughts as assumptions only assumptions to the other person, so they can verify the validity of your assumptions. The error we make in the realm of intention is simple but profound. You know what that is? We assume we know intentions of others when we don't. Worse yet, we decide that they have bad intention. We invent them in our mind. We don't know. We have no reason, no basis, nothing. We just invent them. People sometimes act with no intention, or at least none related to us. And sometimes they act on good intention, and yet their action hurts us. It happens. Some people didn't mind to hurt you, but it happens that you got hurt. So problem, another problem, third problem. Let's say, who is to blame? Every time anything goes wrong, somebody's got to be blamed, rather than me. I am never making any mistakes. Everybody else, no way. They are all wrong. This is a kind of mind thinking. We may not say it loud, but this is what we are thinking. Sometimes, not always. Now, who caused the problem? That's the number one question in our mind. Rather than let's discuss what is what, we automatically say, who caused the problem? So we are going after the person immediately without even thinking anything about it. Or we say, were they incompetent? Did they know what they were doing? How did they do this thing without being knowledgeable about the thing? They messed it up royally, or whatever the words are. And they say, were they unreasonable? You know what unreasonable means? People sometimes don't have the background that we have, and we may thinking at a level of a PhD or whatever, and they are poor guys that have just gone to some high school level, and their level of understanding is different than mine is, or if I was PhD. So the fact the person is talking without any real knowledge, we cannot blame that person is really doing it just for hurting us or anyway, or is unreasonable, because we need to explore and explain. Maybe you should explain that why is it unreasonable that we think. If we cannot explain that, that means we have only an assumption. So where is the unethical? Sometimes people say, oh, why did they do something like that? I don't think it's right. We need to explore why the person did it. Sometimes a person could be sitting next to a person who is always drunk. So we think, oh, he is a partner to this guy who is really drinking all this, so he must be a drinking partner. Maybe that person is trying to help that person lose the drinking job, and maybe help him. That's the way he gets together with the person so they can help him. How can you help the person unless you are with him together? And you find out how can we help the person. But person looking from distance, this guy is unethical. How do you know it's unethical? Unless you really explore it. So what I'm saying is that, and after we have done that, how should they be punished? We automatically come to the conclusion, let's not go to the court or anything. Why? We know that he should be punished this way, this way, this way. And then I'm talking to you, these are the real things that I have personally lived in my life of about 70 years, and I'm 79 now. But I lived 70 years of work in the corporate world in different areas, and I really find this is true statements. And then it says that talking about fault produces what? When we talk about you are wrong, what does it do? Other person is going to do what? Deny. No, I didn't do it. So what does that solve? Nothing. Nada. Then disagreement. If he doesn't deny it, guess what? And some people use the cliche. You know what the cliche is these days? People in the business world use it. Let's agree to disagree. What kind of a garbage is this? Pardon my English. That's what they say. Let's agree to disagree. That means what you have, what I have. Let's not talk about it. That's what it is, basically. That's called I agree to disagree. Let's not I, but we. We agree to disagree. Means we leave the problem under the rug. And then our energy goes into defending ourselves. When we get into the blame frame, what happens? Everybody is trying to show themselves they are right. So what does that solve? Nothing. It just creates more defending work for each other. So now the solution is abandon the blame, make the contribution system. What contribution system means? That if things go wrong, I may have done something or may have not done something, and you have done something and you may not have done something. We both caused the problem to occur where we are. It's not just me one way or you only your way. We have a combination in it. Some sort of a law in physics, if I'm not mistaken. And that means that whenever we say something, there is an opposite side to it. We may not see that way, but that's the reality. So we have, so it says abandon the blame. So how have we contributed, jointly played the role? That's the key. Jointly played the role to the situation. What can we do to move forward? Rather than worrying about yesterday, let's move forward. You know what I'm saying? And then how do I help them understand their contribution? See, sometimes it's hard for people to understand, what did I do wrong? So if we know that, we should explain the person, this is what you did, I understand you did it. See if I'm right, if my understanding is right. If you feel it's right, then let's go move forward. If not, then maybe my understanding was wrong, so correct me. So that way you leave the door open for either way. So he said, how can I influence and improve the situation? That should be in our mind, rather than trying to worry about the past. Let's worry about the future, moving forward. Past is history, it's not going to come back. So how does the change they make to facilitate the changes I need to make? After the discussion is over, there are some things we have to change, there are some things other person has to change. That way we are on the road to recovery. Blame is judging, this is a beautiful sentence. Blame is judging and looks backward. Understanding contribution allows us to learn real causes of the problem and to correct from happening again. Ask them or objectively ask yourself, as disinterested observer, what did I do to be part of this problem? We never ask this question generally, because we think the problem is somebody else, not me. For example, what did I avoid? Sometimes we may not have done something, but we may have avoided this problem until now. Suppose I'm trying to get hold of somebody and I tried my best to get hold of him, nothing happens, no response. Finally I get frustrated and I have my thought built up that something is wrong there. That's the contribution the other person made, that he never responded to you after all the tries that you make. That's a contribution in a sense. So when the blame is a goal, understanding is a casualty. When we start blaming people, understanding goes down the drain and hinders the problem solving. Problem will never be solved. And the contribution encourages learning and change. So it is important always, it is almost always true that what happened is the result of things both people did or failed to do. Feeling conversation. In every conversation there is a part called feeling. How do you feel about what you are saying? So situations are emotionally charged. Whenever we are talking, whether in a meeting, I'm sure you have heard, when we have the membership meeting here, people shout sometimes. Why do they shout? The reason they shout is there are a lot of latent feeling in their heart for over a period of time that's coming out in blisters. So we actually need to get the feelings out the first day rather than waiting for the nth day, and when it gets built up and then we start shouting. There's no need for doing that at all. Unaddressed feelings do what? They leak out and burst out. You know, the anger comes in as a result of feelings that are not being expressed exclusively. That's where the problem of the anger is. Then inhibit our ability to listen. When we are angry, we cannot think straight because our mind is in a different place when we are angry. So whatever the person is saying on the other side, we even don't know what the person is saying. We may say yes, 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 but our mind recorder in the back is saying something completely different because we are angry, deep down. And our feelings are hurt. So we are thinking more about feelings than we are thinking about what the person is saying, whatsoever. Believe me, this is a true story of life that I have lived at least. So acknowledge others' feelings without accusation. Like a schoolwork example. I give you another example. I was trying to talk to my friend yesterday, and I actually had a similar example. I used to work with an organization that has a 500 kids, school, and we had a facility of about 100,000 square feet of the facility where people used to pray. It's called Muslim Community Association in Santa Clara. Guess what? We never collected a penny of rent from the school at all. Okay? And guess what? Anytime a major repair thing come up, school board will come to our board and say, why don't you pay the money halfway? Because it is your kids are here and our kids are here. But they never realized that all these years we haven't collected a penny from them for all the rent, all the lights, all these utilities. Nothing was collected. But they lose that sight of it. How do you explain them? You explain them in a nice little way. So listen, this is one story and I accept that and I respect very well what you are saying. But here is my story. Unless we do your story and my story and get it together, we are going to do nothing but blaming each other and asking for unreasonable things that are not applicable in the real world. So acknowledge others' feelings without accusations. Then judgments. We have the judgments and accusations are based on our perception, not necessarily fact. We think that he is wrong, but how do we know? This is our thinking only. We have never verified it. Then acknowledgement of feeling does not mean that you agree with their position. They may have a different opinion, you may have a different opinion. The fact that you acknowledge their opinion doesn't mean that you really are agreeing with them. No, you are just saying that you have your opinion and I respect that. Situations are emotionally charged. Since feelings are at the core of the difficult conversation, what have you accomplished if you have not addressed them? We need to take into account the feelings of the people and get them out rather than seated in the back of their mind. Understanding feelings, talking about feelings, managing feelings are among the greatest challenges of a human being. Our conclusions on a situation normally reflect our self-interest. I shared with you buyers and sellers situation. Most important feeling transform themselves into judgment. If you have a strong feeling, we start judging people. Accusations and attribution. Attribution means you did something wrong. You are this, you are that. When we can't seem to get past the needing to say, admit it. This is your fault. We should recognize that this is an important clue that we are sitting on an unexpressed feelings inside, that we are now taking it out. So it says, beautiful hadith, al-Muslimu man salim al-Muslimuna bil-lisani wa yadihi. Beautiful, beautiful expression. And it's not just hand and the tongue, it is anything that the communication can do, anything that power can do. With your power and your communication, no human, let alone Muslim, should be hurt. That is the meaning, I understand, of this thing. It says a Muslim is the one that keeps Muslims safe from his or her tongue and hand. And tongue, as I said, tongue and hand doesn't mean just the tongue and hands literally, but it means what the tongue can do and what the hands can do. And the muhajir is the one who leaves what Allah has forbidden. So then the identity issue, which is the last part of it now. And it says, we feel ourselves, are we competent? We always feel that I'm not competent by saying this, what I'm saying. Or we say, am I a good person? Maybe other person doesn't think I am. Or we tend to deny the data inconsistent with our self-image. The data says that you are goofing up X number of places. We think, no, I'm not doing that. I'm okay here. Even though my results in the school board has given me the result and says that I am only at 40% level, but I think I'm at 90% level, because it's our own mental attitude. We let the feedback define who we are. That's the bad thing to do. Let me tell you an example of it, that when I used to manage that other place, one of the job, unfortunately I had, is to basically tow the cars when they were parked illegally and really occupying, 3 other people cannot get out. So I had an instruction from the board to please get the tow truck. So I used to get the tow truck. A lot of people used to call me shaitan. The fact that I did that, and the fact they said that shaitan doesn't mean I become shaitan. Obviously not, because I know in my mind that Allah knows what I am doing it and why I am doing it. If the person would at least talk to me and let's have a conversation that we understand whether I'm really a shaitan or not. Maybe I am. Allahu Akbar. I hope not. So the bottom line is that the fact that people say something to you doesn't mean you are defined now. Nothing else works except what they say. That's not true. It's only their assumption. It is only what they think. That doesn't mean it's a fact. Fact is far away from assumptions. The bigger gap between what we hope is true and what we fear is true, the easier it is to lose our balance. When our identity is at stake, we feel that really my ego is getting in the way, then guess what? Nothing works. Our mind doesn't work, balance doesn't work, we get angry, we want to get out of it. Sometimes we go to the extreme, and some people do. They really do some stupid stuff like taking their life away, and it has happened. So anytime a conversation feels difficult, it is part of precisely how your self-image, identity is nothing more than a self-image, is affected. And it is something beyond the apparent substance and the conversation that is going on. Forget about what's going on. We are thinking about our self-image all the time, while the conversation may be going from one end to the other, doesn't matter. What is really making you sweat is that your self-feeling is on the line, and you begin to sense the implications of the conversation for your self-image. You may begin to lose your balance. You suddenly feel confused. Your anxiety skyrockets. Losing our balance may cause us to lose confidence in ourselves, to lose concentration, and to forget what we were going to say. In more extreme cases, it can feel earth-shattering. We may feel paralyzed, overcome by panic and stricken with an urge to flee or even have trouble breathing. When people are really angry, we have seen how they breathe. You'll be surprised because it all affects our body and our physical structure. Identity solution. These are the solutions. Identify the vulnerability. What is causing you to be in a situation that you are in so it doesn't happen? You need to explore. Negative feedback does not define us, as I said before. Complexity, meaning thereby avoid extremes of it. Your identity. Choose in any instance. What that means? Implying that you have some good traits and some areas of improvement. Nobody is completely one thing. We are never always everything. Nobody is always anything. We are most of the time something, but not always. That's the key understanding of it, here. And have areas of improvement. Both coexist at the same time. Our weaknesses and our strength, both are at the same time coexist. Our job is to, of course, follow up so that our strengths become more important than our weaknesses become marginalized, I call it. Accept your mistakes. Your intentions are complex and dynamic, remember that. So think long term. Nothing is whatever happened today is not the end of the world. We have a long ways to go, inshallah. And then take a break. Sometimes taking a break and going into a different scenery changes the entire environment. And we can think through differently than we are thinking now. Identity solution. Find courage to ask for help. There is never wrong with it. Ask the person on the other side, help me. Or complexity implies moving away from the false choice between I am perfect or I am worthless. We are in between. We are neither. As for everyone, what is true about you is going to be a mix of good and bad behavior, wise and unwise choices that we make, and that you have good traits and some areas of improvement in your personality. Both coexist. That is the reality of life. The more easily you can admit your mistake, your own mixed intentions, and your own contribution to the problem, the more balanced you will feel during the conversation. Higher the chances of outcome will be. One reason people are reluctant to admit the mistakes is that they fear being seen as weak or incompetent. Yet often, generally competent people who take the responsibility of mistakes in stride are seen as confident, secure, and big enough not to have to be perfect. Nobody is anyway. So whereas those who resist acknowledging even the possibility of mistakes are seen as insecure and lacking confidence. This is the reality of life. The conversation will bring the share of the surprises when we are talking with people. Testing your self-image in ways you never even thought of, The question is not whether you will get the knockdown. You will. The real question is whether you are able to get back on your feet and keep the conversation moving in a productive direction. That requires a skill set and work. Creating a learning conversation. Primary task, now this is a critical sentence I would say in the entire presentation, and this is this. Primary task is not to persuade anybody, impress anybody, or trick somebody, or outwit anybody, or convert or win over the other person. Nobody can change any person ourselves. They have to change themselves. This is the most critical slide I have, by the way, which again, it's a very simple words, but there are a lot of meaning in it. It says the primary task is not to persuade anybody, because we always think about when we are talking, we want to say, he should think my way, or she should think my way. That's our main motto, and that is a fallacy. Primary task is not to persuade, not to impress. If we can help somebody understand what we understand, that's wonderful. But that doesn't mean that we are persuading the person. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran says, La ikraha fid deen. What a beautiful statement that is, And deen doesn't mean just in madhab only, in every walk of our life. La ikraha fid deen. We cannot be compelling our children shouldn't be compelling us, our brothers could not be compelling us, our sisters should not be doing it. We all have a freedom that God has given, nobody should take it away from us, ever, ever. That's the objective of this particular slide. I'm sorry. So that is what we are saying, win over the other person. We never want to do that. Then should we just let go? I'm going to skip this class quickly. Meaning thereby, if we think that is not going to do any advantage, we are not going to do any learning, might as well, it's better to talk at the time that we can do. Begin from the third story. What does the third story means? We have our story, other person has his story. How about if we both went to judge? We went to a judge, and how the judge will look. Judge will not say, this is my story or this is your story. Judge will say, let me listen to his story, let me listen to her story, and then I will tell you what I think. That's what the third person does. We have to start thinking about a third person mentality. If what a third person was, I call it a virtual person in technical terms. Virtual person doesn't exist, but actually virtually we are thinking about somebody who is looking at my point of view and who is looking at his point of view. And that's exactly what we need to start looking. Jazakallahu khair. I want to get a sip of water. So what I said that describes the problem in a way that rings the true for both sides, not just one side. So entire picture is in front of us rather than only one picture. Half a picture is no picture at all. Total picture is the picture we need. Then a third story, and then their story and your story. So first comes the third person's thinking of both of you, then other person's story, then comes your story, last. Describe the problem as differences. Never say you are wrong, never say you are right, but say, oh, okay, this is your opinion, my opinion is this, we are different in this way. And why we are different? Explain. Ask open-ended questions. Some people normally ask, here's the thing, what do you think? Say yes or no. Yes or no answers never get you anywhere. Why do you think the way you think is the question to ask, rather than yes, no answer never gives you any learning at all. You never learn by yes and no answer at all. So open-ended means really asking more than yes, no question. Extend the invitation to understand their perspective better and to share your own. Be willing to tell your internal struggle without judgment and accusations. And use help me understand better. What a wonderful sentence that is. Rather than I understand, that means I got all the knowledge. So what's there to learn? Nothing. But we say, help me understand, maybe some person has something too informative to tell me. So do not impose, don't force anybody, like la ikraha fid-din. Make them your partner by starting, help me understand, or let's work on it together moving forward. That's how we solve the problems. Sure. I think we did that already. I went too far. Was it? I'm sorry? This is it. Yeah, oh, wow. Too far. I'm sorry, 45? Okay, inshallah. I'm sorry. Are you going backward? Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, because I hold up in a different way. Sorry about that. 45 is coming, inshallah, pretty soon. $38, is it? 40, 41, 42, 43. Oh, why? 44, 45. So begin with the third story. So you help me understand, not I understand. Do not impose, make them partner. Okay, we finish with that one. And now, good driver. Let's see. This is Every difficult conversation includes an invisible third story. Third story is a one keen observer who tells someone with no stake in your problem. The observer can understand each side's concerns and can see why each of you is frustrated with the other. The third person can be a mutual friend or a counselor. The virtual third person has no power. He's there just to help to both sides understand them. The third story would remove the judgment from the description because third person has no interest in your issue. He or she is there to just help understand. And so we leave the situation as a difference in opinion rather than, so there's another beautiful expression. I'm going to get to the bottom part of it now. We're going to go another 15 minutes inshallah. And it says that Quranic ayah really is teaching us a lot of wisdom here. You know what it says? وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ. It's not say isma'u. It's say فَاسْتَمِعُوا. فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Beautiful expression. And when the Quran is recited attentively, listen to it and be silent so you may obtain mercy. Now this ayah is not just for the Quran as I understand it. This is Allah's way of explaining to us that when we read Quran, what are we supposed to be doing? We're supposed to be listening to God and talking to Him in a sense. As if we are praying, at least we should assume that He is watching us, if we cannot assume that we are watching Him. So that is a level that we have to be. And then every ayah we are reciting, we are actually talking to the God. So when we are talking to the God and God is telling us that we have to do this to really understand what I'm talking about. The same is true of when we are having a conversation with people. We have to be attentive to what they are saying so the message is clear to the T in our mind. Rather than our mind is someplace else, just like when I'm praying, I'm thinking of my grocery list rather than thinking about what I'm reading Quran. You know how that is. I'm talking about me. So I'm talking, the same thing goes with majority of us, that we sometimes are listening, but we are not listening. We are just, or a lot of people in the corporate world will tell you, if you want to listen, keep your eyes in front of the eyes. All these tax they call them, this is ceremonial, I call it. Because ceremonial work doesn't help. You have to go to the depth of what the person is saying. Coming up. See, shift your internal understanding so I understand. Forget that part. Let's talk about help me understand. Then get the words and focus on authenticity. Some people get bogged down with the language and the grammar and all that stuff. That's not critical. Critical is the message behind it. Be genuinely curious, not just say hi and smile, and all that is fine, but deep down in your heart and mind you should be thinking about how can I help the situation. If it is not, then we are fooling ourselves that we are doing a good conversation. So it says to be genuinely curious and care for each other. Active listening without caring is perceived as ceremonial. You know, like having your head this way and look at this way and look at that. All these things are ceremonial, but the real part is what is being said. Manage your internal voice into learning mode. See, when we are listening, our mind is talking just the opposite. If we are blaming somebody, in our mind I say, he's wrong, he's full of this and he's full of that. And no matter what the person says, is going from one ear to the other. It's not getting here. Because our mind has a recorder of their own. And that recorder is not going to stop until we stop it ourselves. So we have to learn how to stop that recorder in order for us to really have the words of the other person go in there properly. That's what that is. It's very hard to do, but we can practice it, inshallah. So manage your internal voice into learning mode, and because it is the real heart of the good listening. Inquire to learn. Sometimes people ask questions to see how much the person has the knowledge. That's what you should, how much he knows, how much she knows. This is the wrong approach. The real approach should be, how can I learn from what the person is saying? And that is the approach that we need to adapt. So it says, inquire to learn, don't use question to cross-examine people. What do you get out of it? Nothing. Ask open-ended question, we talk about it. And paraphrase their perspective for clarity. This is another great expression, believe me. Paraphrase their perspective for clarity. Next slide will explain. What is the benefit of paraphrasing? You know what a paraphrasing means? You said something and I don't say nothing. I say, yeah. That's no good. The way to do it is this. A chance to correct. When you paraphrase whatever you said, I repeat the same words and say, did I understand it correctly, sir or ma'am? That means the person has a chance to correct any error in my understanding, what I'm saying. And also their message. Somebody is giving me a message and I'm misunderstanding. How do I know? Unless I paraphrase and tell them that that's what I understood. And then the other person feels that you paid attention to him. Because that tells you that yeah, he's listening to me. So that what that does, the other person would be inclined to hear your message more attentively because he knows that you listen and you ask questions. So now already you create a camaraderie for good understanding between the two of you. And this is another part that Quran talks about it beautifully. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida. Our job should be straightforwardness. Easing in is no good. For example, people have a habit to say, when I came to this country first time and I had something to ask a person what to do, then he would say, well, then I will ask question, what do you mean by well? Well, I said, what do you mean by that? Well, Then I said, when I asked them, well, then I said, well, you know what I mean. What the heck is this? First you said, well, then you said, well, I don't know, otherwise I won't be asking you. And then he says, well, you know what I mean. How do I know what you mean? So this is called easing in. You know what I mean by easing in? Means saying in a side way without giving a straight talk. Islam really teaches us, قُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. Straightforwardness. There's nothing better than that. Then speak the heart of the matter with clarity. Don't hide anything in a very neat way without accusing anybody. Say it. Express what you see, why you see it. Why part is very critical. Just to see it doesn't matter. Why do you see the way you see it? And how do you feel? And who are you? In what position you are talking to me? Believe that what you want to express is worthy of expression. If it is not, you have to keep quiet. If you can't solve anything and you cannot help anybody and help yourself, it's better to really think through when you are ready for it. Avoid easing in. I just mentioned the word well, and I know what I mean, whatever stuff. And then present conclusions as imaginings, as possibilities in interpretation. Our conclusions are not final. Nobody's conclusion is final except Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are human beings. Our conclusions are temporary and they are subject to all the negotiation in the world you can think of. So share your conclusion, share how did you get that decision that you came up with. You came up with a decision, how did you come up with this conclusion? If you cannot explain it, you say, no, that's what I think. That doesn't cut it. You have to explain. If you cannot explain, that means you have only assumptions. It is not a conclusion at all. We call it a conclusion, but it's only an assumption. Instead of asking for agreement, just say yes or no, ask how do you see it differently. When you ask that question, you get a lot more input. Rather than saying, is it okay? The person say yes or no. That doesn't solve nothing. Doesn't solve nothing. The only way we solve problems is to get the feedback from the other person. Lead the problem solving. We have now 2 more slides, okay? Acknowledge the feeling before problem solving. Reframe, like we talk about, okay? Your story into different stories. Accusations into intentions and impact. Blame into contribution. Judgments and characterizations into feelings. What is wrong with you? Instead of saying that, say what is going on for you. Or sounds like you are hurt. It's a lot better saying than what's wrong with you. That's accusation. How can they think of that? That is accusation. I wonder what information they have that I don't. That's a positive statement. and make the other person feel like he is being heard and understood. The conversations in action, these are the good questions to ask. Can you say a little more about how you see things? What info might you have that I don't? How do you see it differently? What impact my actions had on you? Can you say a little more about why you think this is my fault? Were you reacting to something I did? How are you feeling about all this? Say something more about why this is important for you. What would it mean to you if that happened? As an empathetic listener, you are on a journey with a direction but no destination. No guaranteed yet. We are just starting. You will never arrive. Like I have been married to my wife for last 42 years now, alhamdulillah, and we had actually wonderful life all our life. But guess what? I can never say standing up here that I know my wife 100%. I don't. That is human life, human reaction. We don't know. So a person who lived with a person 42 years, day in and day out, okay, I still don't know. We may say we know, but we don't. This is my feeling. So here's what it is. Said, you will never arrive. You just get closer to it. That's all. So you will never be able to say, oh, I truly understand it all. There's no such thing. And even if we are done with one difficult conversation and solved it, guess what? More to come. Joy, enjoy, more to come. They are coming. Life is full of it. Each time we solve one, we learn from it and do another way, and do another way, and do another way. Just like one negotiation is complete, another negotiation waiting. So there is no end to it. This is life. We are never done. Like they say, cowboy job is never done, they call it, you know. So bottom line is this, I truly understand you. We will never be able to say that. We are all too complex. We really are. Human beings are complex. They are not simple, like a chair or table or whatever. Okay? And our skills to imagine ourselves into other people's lives is definitely limited. That includes my own wife. I'm telling you. I'm sure she'll say about me the same. Now, this is the last slide. This is the critical slide that you should really and truly, I'm going to, as I told you, I'm going to give each one of you the entire presentation to email. If you send me the email, I'll be delighted to do each one of you, and I'll do it before I go to sleep. That's a promise, inshallah. So it says here, this is the conclusion of the entire talk I've been doing, and hopefully making you tired up listening to me. It says, sort out what happened. The emotions and the identity issues. Avoid insisting on being right one. Nobody is right all the time. And even if we are right, we shouldn't say so. Let the other person speak that we are. Avoid the blame and reading into intentions of other people. Avoid truth-seeking. What truth-seeking is, I am right, you are wrong. Try to understand the situation from a third-party perspective. Think of a judge, being a judge of yourself, virtual judge. Reframe the story. Take on a learning mode. Invent options. This is a creative work. When we are having a difficult conversation, this is the most critical work we have. You know what that is? Invent the options, not just for you, for each side's key concern. How can I release the concern of the other person so she or he will never have a problem with our conversation in the future? It may, but at least we try that. So I think I did something stupid again. I'm sorry. Allah, Allahu Akbar Kabir. See how ignorant I am? Shows. Okay, so this is it. As a result, this last statement is a very wonderful statement. Results that always go one way rarely last. You may have a hakim or a king, or whoever he is or she is, queen. They may last for a short period of time and have their way or the highway, they call it, my way or the highway. that doesn't last for too long. It lasts for a short period of time until the world turns. So that is the conclusion of my entire speech. Now, next thing I have, which you don't have to stay with if you don't want to, is called the case study. I have a real case study that applies all these principles, and that takes about 45 minutes at the most. Try to make it half an hour if I can. But before we do that, let's have some break. جزاكم الله خيرا في الدارين في الدنيا والآخرة.
الله يا شيخ، الله ينور عليك يا شيخ. Beautiful, beautiful.
شكرا.
أيوك أنت هون لوكالي ولا؟ ما شاء الله ما شاء الله.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my email.